in about 54, 55, along in there, Harold rented little old wooden boats down there, 50 cents a day. That wasn't very much, and we had a 2 horsepower Firestone engine that we would put out around the duck blinds and fish with the cane poles and the gudgeon minnows. Now, there's one thing that a lot of people don't know. The gudgeon minnows have males and females like anybody else. It swims in the water. The male gudgeon, the largemouth, will not eat them.
Huh.
They eat the female, but they won't eat the male. And the way you can tell the difference, the male is colored like a trout, got a lot of color on it and everything. And we were fishing around the duck blind, John and I, one day, and I put 3 bass in the boat, and John never had a bite. I said, "What's the matter with your minnow? It's probably dead. Put it over here, and I'll put another one on for you." And he was in one end of the boat, I was in the other, but I was in where the bucket of the minnows was. So I reach in the bucket and get him a female gudgeon, which is gray, solid gray, with a kind of a bluish-like back on it. You know what the gudgeons are.
Yeah.
Females are the ones that don't have all the pretty red and yellow spots on it.
That's right.
So I took his off, threw it in the water. And he says, "Is it dead?" I said, "No, it's still barely kicking." So I put the female on. Threw it back the same place he'd been throwing, and it wasn't in there a half a minute till old cork went bloop. It was gone. He caught about 1.5 pounds of largemouth. Put it in the boat. I said, "Flip it back over here." I always used the gray ones because they looked more like a minnow, and I caught fish on them. So if I was fishing with a male minnow and he was on there for a long time and nobody took him, I figured he wasn't live enough and throw him away and put another one on. And I got on to using the female because we'd run out of the males trying to catch something with them. And we found out that they didn't bite them male gudgeon minnows.
Huh.
The popping bug that I made for Walt Cary was a copy of the female gudgeon minnow, the gray grizzly. I think some laying there on the table, I believe. Yeah, that's it. That's the gray grizzly. That's the color of the female gudgeon minnow, and that tears their butt up in Back Bay. Now, back in the 50s, the lower end of the bay looked in 1954 exactly the way it looks now. No grass. If you see any grass down there, it's not milfoil. Not the kind that the bass use to cover. The only grass that you found in Back Bay, to my memory, in the middle 50s and on up to probably halfway through the 60s, was the celery grass that grew up on the other side of Big Cedar Island.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that Little Cedar isn't there anymore. And there used to be a shallow bar between Big Cedar and Little Cedar Island. We would cross that shallow bar and we'd run into the celery grass on the other side. We caught bass out the celery grass on minnows and on poppers. But the milfoil itself, how it started, I don't know, but it didn't really get good until the late 60s. Now, 1978 or 79, a hurricane came through there. Hurricanes didn't scare me because I just never bothered about them. To make a long story short, the water got up to Harold Grimstead's office door and it completely covered his boat docks. That's how the wind pushed the water up. They have in Back Bay, or did back in the late 70s, I found an area up next to Pelletory Point. You know where that's at?
Mm-hmm.
All right off Pelletory Point, there was an open area up there. Not a single blade of grass growing in it. Nothing. To get to this section of water, about as big as maybe 3 or 4 tennis courts, that's how big it was. And you could get on the inside of that thing, and you could wade it. It was only waist deep there. Fish around the edge on the inside and just slaughtered the bass because there was no cover in that center.
Uh-huh.
But the water temperature was at least 10 degrees cooler in that water than it was out where the grass was. And I got in, I took a bunch of bass in, and I asked Harold, I said, which pond do you want them in? He says, well, I'm thinking about putting them in one next to the boat next to the office. He says, where'd you catch those? I says, in an open area out next to Pelletory Point. I says, I think a spring comes up in there because the water's cooler in the open area where the grass ain't growing. He says, they're not springs. He says, they're marsh drains. See, his grandfather was born and raised down right where Harold had his outfit there. And I says, marsh drains? He said, yeah. When the water gets up on the land, it drains out through the marsh drains into the bay. I said, it's that way for the water to get out. He said, yeah, that's the way a lot of it gets out, comes through the marsh drains. It's like having a damn pipe system, I guess. But I run into that damn thing because I looked around. I just didn't go out and turn around and come back. I'd go someplace else and do this. When I went down there for a weekend, I stayed the weekend. And I found places down there to catch fish. I never saw anybody else there. But when the hurricane came through and the grass died, the water so much had gone up into the flats and the cornfields and things in Pelletory Point. Right up above Pelletory Point used to be, back in the 70s, a huge hog farm. Mm-hmm. You could smell it if the wind come out the northeast. You could smell it all around the campground and everywhere. Well, the farmers, they had this damn hog farm that needed corn, so what did the farmers start growing? Corn. They didn't grow anything. They grew corn, sold it to the hog farmers. What did they do to control their crops, to make sure that the grass didn't overtake? They put herbicide down to kill the grass. What happened to the herbicide? When the water got high and the marsh drains, it drained back into the lake and killed every damn blade of grass in there. I tried to tell the biologists at the Game Commission about this system of water that would drain out into the bay. And I says, the herbicide they put on the grass got in that water, went out in the bay and killed all the grass. The bay turned pea green. And if you see these big rolls of hay in the hay fields, can you imagine a roll of grass 300 yards long?
Good gracious.
You take that bale of hay and stretch that thing out 300 yards. That's what you had to cross with a boat. Because when that grass died, and the wind got up and started moving that water, it rolled that grass up. And many of these big boats with 150 horse engines on them couldn't get across the grass. So we went to small engines where you could pull them up and take a pole and push the boat across the grass. I went where I wanted. I caught bass down there from the time the hurricane killed all the grass until 1981. 81, I never went back because the last day I went down there, I couldn't catch a bass to save my butt.
Wow.
And that is my theory on the grass. And I think I'm closer to right than anybody else because that herbicide killed that damn root system. Mm-hmm. Biologists at the Game Commission wouldn't even talk to me. They said, that's ridiculous. I said, no, it's not. I said, I've fished in them marsh drains. I know that water comes off that land.
Do you recall when they started pumping the salt water into there? Was that after the storm? You know, I guess the pier at
They
Little
pumped
Island.
salt water in there years before that storm. The upper part of Back Bay, not necessarily around where Harold's is, but we would find a lot of our fish by getting a handful of water and sticking our tongue in it, because we could tell where it was salty and where it wasn't. Largemouth survived very well up to 15% salt.
Uh-huh.
And we would fish Knott's Island, we would fish Cedar Island, we fished the Katy blinds, every blind up as far as that marsh, Ragged Island Marsh, all that had a tiny bit of salt taste to it. Harold's didn't have as much. So most of our fishing where we caught the best fish was on the other side of the first landfall outside east of Harold's. We went over to Southwest Cove, fished that, Knott's Island, fished that. We fished, if the wind was from the south, we would fish the north side of the main bank between Cedar Island and this eastern shoreline. We fished where other people didn't, and we caught fish that the other people left alone. So that worked fine for us. Hell, we knew before we ever got down there by looking where the wind was from, where the fish would be. And you know, you don't have to be a damn wizard to figure out stuff like that.